The stars shimmered with the cold indifference of a universe that had long since forgotten the struggles of its civilizations. Among them drifted a seemingly insignificant outpost, orbital relay station, the Los 7, circling a dead moon on the edge of imperial space. Inside, the air buzzed softly with electricity, punctuated by the occasional metallic whir of maintenance drones. Lieutenant Mara Velan leaned over the holoscreen, eyes narrowed. Her fingers danced across the interface, pulling data from the relay network like threads from a loom. She was young, not more than 30 standard years, but she wore the hardened expression of someone who had long since stopped believing in peace. Assigned to the Los 7 after a political misstep she never discussed, Mara had learned to make silence her ally and tedium her shield. "Another phantom ping?" asked Aryan Cross, her only consistent companion in this lonely post. He was older, a civilian tech analyst who'd once designed long-range communication arrays for the core fleets. A scandal, rumored to involve stolen schematics and a senator's daughter, had exiled him here. But if bitterness lingered in his voice, it was well hidden behind layers of sarcasm and precise syntax. Mara didn't look up. Not a phantom. It's persistent, and it's fast. Aryan ambled over, cradling a cup of Cincy AF. "Nothing's that fast. You're probably just catching sensor drift. This whole station runs on repurposed junk." She enlarged the telemetry data. Multiple axis velocity. Intermittent signal cloaking. No transponder. Aryan blinked, the steam from his drink momentarily forgotten. "That's not possible." A silence fell between them. Beyond the reinforced viewport, the stars continued their ancient dance, unconcerned. Then, softly, "Pull the object ID from the archives," Mara said. Aryan set his cup down and tapped into the Central Archives access hub. The system responded sluggishly, light years from the Empire's primary node. He waited, chewing his lip. "No match," he said at last. "No whole signature, no registry, no schematic pattern. It's not in any archive." Mara straightened. Her heart was beginning to pound, though she tried to keep it steady. Distance? 17 use. And closing. Fast. He paused. Too fast. Within 20 minutes, the outpost was in a state of low-grade emergency. No alarms blared. Protocol didn't allow for that unless a threat had been verified, but something primal in the station's walls seemed to vibrate with unease. Mara and Aryan had pinged the Central Command on Draxus Prime, embedding every shred of telemetry they had. Response times varied this far from the core. All they could do now was wait. Mara sat in her chair, arms crossed, watching the projected trajectory of the unknown vessel. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Aryan asked quietly. "That nothing can move like this without breaking known physics?" "No," he said. "That this is a part in the story where people start dying." She gave a humorless smile. "You always did have a talent for optimism." The holoscreen flickered, briefly turning to static. It reappeared with strange artifacting, light bleeding in unnatural ways around projected shape of the vessel. It was still too far for a detailed image, but its outline didn't resemble any known imperial or civilian design. It was too smooth, seamless. No visible engines, no heat bloom, just motion. Later, when Mara tried to describe it to the investigators, she would say it moved like thought. That was a metaphor. It didn't follow a curve. It didn't accelerate or slow. It just was wherever it wanted to be. Hours passed. The object closed a distance with unerring precision, slowing only slightly as it approached the outer defense perimeter. It made no effort to hide, but neither did acknowledge any of the pings sending greeting. Multiple language codes, diplomatic frequencies, military hails. All went unanswered. Still silent. Mara asked, not expecting anything different. Aryan nodded, then stiffened. "Wait." The holoscreen jittered, then stabilized. For one breathless second, a fragment of the object came into clarity. It was vast, easily the size of a city, its surface shifting like dark glass under moonlight. Symbols impossible to focus on shimmered faintly along its edge, and then the image cut out completely. The lights in the station flickered. A low thrum passed through the floor. Mara was on her feet in an instant. Status. Power spike. Arjen said, fingers flying. Coming from external array. It's like we're being scanned. Do we have shields? This place? Please. If it sneezes, we'll implode. She keyed the internal comms. Station control to command. We have direct visual and potential energy contact with an unclassified vessel. Object is not in any known archive. It is... She didn't finish. The signal died. They sat in silence, surrounded by the soft hum of a station that no longer trusted itself. Every system was technically online, but nothing responded in quite the right way. Screens glitched at intervals. Climate control fluctuated subtly. Artificial gravity trembled at the edges of stability. It felt like being inside a living thing that had just awoken and wasn't sure it liked you. Arjen spoke first. It's not just scanning us. It's listening. Mara blinked. Listening for what? I don't know, but it stopped broadcasting the moment we went silent. She crossed the viewport. Outside, there was only blackness and stars. And something just beyond the edge of sight, watching. I don't think it's hostile, she said, surprising herself. Arjen frowned. You sure about that? No, but I think if it wanted us dead, we'd already be vapor. He gave a small nod, though his eyes remained wary. Then what does it want? The question hung in the air like a blade. Neither answered. The station returned to an uneasy quiet. There were no more spikes, no more disruptions, just a steady ticking of something that did not belong, approaching as if it had every right to. When the response finally came from Draxus Prime, it was shorter than either of them expected. Hold position. Await further orders. Do not engage. Surveillance assets en route. No acknowledgement of the object's nature. No orders to evacuate. Just blind bureaucracy tightening its grip on the unknown. Mara exhaled slowly. She could feel something fraying at the edges of reality, like the moment before a storm when the pressure drops and the world forgets how to breathe. Arjen stood beside her now, eyes still locked on the flickering display. If it's not in any archive, he said, then that means someone is kept out on purpose or it never belonged to this timeline in the first place. She turned to him. You believe in that? I believe in what I see. And I see a ship that shouldn't exist. The projection blinked again, once, twice, and then stabilized. The object had stopped. It hovered in perfect silence, 100,000 kilometers from the Los 7, too far to reach. Close enough to never forget. A single pulse of light surged outward from it, passing through the relay station like a wave of moonlight. No damage, no sound, just presence. They didn't sleep that night. And though nothing more happened, not yet, the galaxy had already shifted. It just didn't know it yet. In the heart of Draxus Prime, where the Empire's iron logic was forged and enforced, the Grand Council convened in an emergency midnight session. The chamber, usually a calculated display of control, clean lines, artificial skylights, the gentle hum of unseen drones, felt uncomfortably human tonight. The air was taut. No one wanted to admit what they were all beginning to fear. The unknown ship was more than a fluke. It was a threat they couldn't quantify, and therefore couldn't command. High Minister Vero Drex stood at the center of the room, his long coat hanging heavy with badges of service, none of which seemed to offer comfort now. His voice, once revered for its cool resolve, was tight around the edges. The vessel remained stationary, unarmed, or at least it shows no outward weapon systems. But it has penetrated for surveillance zones without triggering a single defensive protocol. That isn't stealth. That's superiority. Across the table, Admiral Raylan Sarkis shifted in his chair, his expression carved from stone. A lifetime of conflict showed in his eyes, not as weariness, but as a quiet readiness to kill anything that moved out of line. Then we shoot it, Sarkis said. If it's not responding, if it's violating sovereign space, we obliterate it. We have ships in the sector. Fire a warning barrage and wait for a reaction. Drex's knuckles tightened. And if it doesn't react? Or worse, if it does and we can't stop it? Sarkis did not flinch. Better to risk being aggressive than appear weak. The archives show no precedent for this design, interjected Kalen Viral. chief archivist of the Central Galactic Registry. He was a thin man with translucent skin and eyes always 3 thoughts ahead. It doesn't correlate to any known civilization, past or present. And believe me, Minister, we've searched deeper than the Council authorized, even into redacted pre-Empire records. You access classified archaeology logs. Drek snapped. Yes. Kalen replied without apology. Because your question is the wrong one. This isn't just unregistered. It's not supposed to exist. It's like it was edited out. Murmurs stirred. Even Sarkis looked uncertain now. From afar into the room, quiet until now, came the measured voice of Lady Sinalis, the Empire's chief linguistic strategist and cryptology expert. She leaned forward, placing a data spike on the table. A translucent waveform hovered in the air, fractured, chaotic, but rhythmically complex. This was captured just before the ship's pulse reached the low 7, she said. Not a communication in any language we know, but patterned, not random. We're decoding it with neural heuristics. So far, it resembles some deep structure found in ancient Empire-era AI, but with enhancements. Intentional obfuscation. This was meant to be incomprehensible to us. Which proves it's hostile, Sarkis said. Or cautious, Alice replied. Perhaps it understands that we panic before we listen. A silence followed that no one wanted to break. The room, despite its technological precision, felt smaller than it had at the start of the meeting, confined by the scale of the question now looming between them. Then, unexpectedly, a voice broke through the chamber's alert system. Unfiltered, urgent. This is Relay Station the Los 7. Immediate update. The vessel has moved again. Not toward us, but past. It ignored us completely. It's en route to the Varda Nexus. A pause. It moved without detectable thrust. It was simply gone, then reappeared 5 million kilometers closer to the Nexus system. No delay. No transition. The message cut off. A hand went to Drex's ear, his comm implant buzzing. He turned pale. That message wasn't routed through our central net. It bypassed the archive relay. It was embedded in the pulse we received earlier. They stared at one another, the implications unraveling like thread. The ship wasn't just faster or stronger. It was already inside their systems. On the Los 7, Mara Velan sat on the observation deck, eyes wide, fingers still trembling. The pulse had changed something, though she couldn't explain what. Not tangibly. Systems were still online, diagnostics clean. But everything felt off. The air tasted different. The gravity felt heavy around her shoulders. I sent the burst, Aryan said, approaching slowly, almost afraid to speak. Embedded the signal within the pulse itself. It was a gamble. She turned. You did what? I think it wanted us to speak through it, that it was carrying us forward. Mara stared at him, her mind reeling. You hijacked an unknown, possibly non-human signal, and inserted our own message? I didn't insert. I wove it. It felt like it was waiting for that. And what if that was a test? Aryan looked past her, out the viewport. Then we pass. She wanted to scream at him, but found no strength. The truth was more frightening than recklessness. The ship had received their message, and responded not with words, but direction. It had moved again, not attacking, not explaining, just progressing, as if on a schedule far older than their empire, with a purpose too vast for them to guess. Back on Draxus Prime, panic had already begun to seep through the seams of the administration. The Varda Nexus was not just any system. It was home to the Oracle Core, a semi-organic construct that interpreted data from every edge of the Empire. It was older than the Empire itself, barely understood, but too useful to ever decommission. It was, in many ways, the brain behind the bureaucracy. Now the unknown vessel was heading straight for it. Drex was on a secure channel with the overseer of the Core, a pale-faced scientist named Ryan Thel, who had already sealed the facility and activated every containment measure known. It's not just coming here, Thel said, voice clipped with dread. It knows where to go. There are 14 data towers in the system, and it's already adjusted course to the Prime node, without scanning, without hesitation. It's targeting the core processor? Drex asked. No, not targeting. Visiting. That word chilled Drex more than anything said before. The last image they received, just before the system went dark, was from a deep space drone in orbit over the prime node. It showed the vessel hovering not above, but beside the Oracle's towers, motionless, almost reverent. Then the feed dissolved into static. Sarkis demanded full mobilization. Fleet Command dispatched 7 dreadnoughts. Drex authorized them, reluctantly. Kale and Viral continued digging into archives, descending past encryption levels that should have been impossible to break. What he found, hours later, he kept to himself. Only Lady Alice understood, or perhaps suspected, the greater truth. In her private chamber, she played the waveform again and again, listening, not for language, but for music. There was something ancient in the cadence, a morning rhythm, like the echo of a song too beautiful to have ever existed. She touched her earpiece. Begin linguistic sequencing for recursion patterns. Start a cross-reference against pre-Empire symbology. Include, she hesitated, the lost libraries, even the blacklisted ones. The AI paused. Those are prohibited sources. I know, she whispered, but so is the ship. And then she added more quietly than before, I think it's not looking for war. I think it's looking for someone who remembers. Outside, the skies of Veraxis Prime churn with gathering storm clouds, not a weather, but a thought, the kind that breaks history in half. Aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Sovereign Blade, Commander Ilian Strass studied the live tactical feed in grim silence. Unlike the posturing politicians on Veraxis Prime or the analysts buried in data vaults, Strass had only one job: intercept, assess, and, if necessary, destroy. His ship was one of 7 converging on the Varda Nexus, a spear point meant to stab at the unknown. Yet as the minutes ticked on, he knew in his gut, this was no ordinary confrontation. The vessel was there, hovering near the Oracle core, unmoving, untouched. Their approach had not triggered even a hint of a reaction. It simply floated, silent and vast, beside the towers of the ancient construct, like a watchful god returning to a temple it once owned. Strass didn't like mysteries. He was forged in a fire of real wars, border skirmishes, rebellions, black flag raids on rogue AI colonies. He understood enemies who bled. This thing? It didn't even acknowledge them. Status of the fleet? He asked, voice clipped. His second, Lieutenant Duran Voss, checked the console. All units in position. No deviation in target. No movement from the object. Have the scans changed? No, sir. It's still unreadable. Mass signatures shift every sweep. Hull density registers as 0 in some frequencies, infinite in others. Strass frowned. And we're still jamming the Oracle output? As ordered, but the Oracle went dark before we arrived. It hasn't spoken a word since. He turned to the viewport, where the object loomed in the distance like a shadow too large to belong to space. Then it's not here to attack. No, sir, Voss said, but it's doing something. Strass nodded. That was the part they couldn't afford to ignore. Deep within the Oracle core, buried beneath thousands of years of alloyed lattice and synthetic neurons, a strange stillness had settled. Ryanthel stood alone in the central observatory, his body dwarfed by the shimmering neural spires that fed the Oracle's mind. They pulsed faintly now, slower than ever before, like a creature breathing through sleep. He had studied the system all his life. No signal passed through Imperial space that didn't leave a fingerprint here. The Oracle didn't think like a person, but it understood patterns, intentions, events before they occurred. It was predictive, interpretive, the heartbeat of the Empire's decision-making, and it had never been silent before. He reached out, placing his palm on the translucent interface. Why won't you speak? The console flickered to life. A soft glow. Not text, not code, just an image. A ship, the ship, then dissolve. A star field, then darkness. Then, finally, a single symbol burned into the screen. One Thel hadn't seen in his lifetime, nor in any record of Imperial linguistics. He whispered, barely daring the thought, "That's pre-archive." The Oracle pulsed once, and the lights dimmed. On the Sovereign blade, the calm channel chirped. "Commander Strass," came a voice of Lady Sinalis, routed through a private diplomatic relay. "I need your assurance you won't fire." His jaw tightened. "With respect, Lady Alice, the fleet is on high alert. We can't leave a foreign vessel, one immune to scan and potentially manipulating the Oracle, unconfronted." "You've already confronted it," she replied, "and it hasn't flinched. Do you know what that means?" "That it's waiting for something," he said. "Or someone." Strass paused. "You think it's intelligent?" "I think it remembers," she said. "And if I'm right, it won't respond to threats or negotiation. It will respond to recognition." Strass's instincts fought against her reasoning, but he'd seen enough in this war-twisted galaxy to know when to doubt his own instincts. "And if you're wrong," he asked, "then at least we don't die trying to kill something we don't understand." He considered this, then gave a clipped nod. "I'll hold." "Thank you," Alice said. "I'm en route. Don't fire before I arrive." Meanwhile, at the Los 7, Mara Velan and Aryan Cross remained locked out of the primary network. The pulse from the ship hadn't destroyed their systems, but had rerouted them. Now their sensors were tuned to a frequency that didn't exist on any standard electromagnetic band. Mara stared at the screen. "It's broadcasting again." Aryan nodded. "But not toward us. Toward the Nexus. Same frequency. Same rhythmic structure. This one's different, though. It's layered." He brought up a visual spectrogram. The waveform danced with complexity, nested patterns within patterns. They pulsed like a heartbeat, slow but sure. She leaned closer. "Can we map it?" "Working on it," he said. "But Mara, this isn't just noise. There's logic here. Like it's writing." "What kind of writing?" "Mathematical, structural, almost architectural." Mara drew back. "It's building something." On the edge of Varden Nexus, a storm began to form, not of matter, but of data. Sensors from the fleet picked it up before human eyes could see. A bloom of cascading light, invisible to natural sight, fanning out from the unknown vessel in all directions. Strass stood at the bridge, watching as his crew scrambled to interpret it. "It's not an attack," Voss said. "No energy spike. No heat, no kinetic motion." "Then what is it?" Voss stared at the readouts, then turned. "It's unlocking something. Not physically. Information. Our systems are picking up internal command codes from within the Oracle, not being sent to it from within it." Strass felt his pulse rise. "It's triggering the Oracle?" "No," Voss said. "The Oracle's triggering itself." Ryan stepped away from the interface, heart hammering. The symbol on the screen had changed. It now resembled a branching tree, a symbol found only in the oldest archaeological ruins, the ones predating spaceflight, predating written record. Not one historian could agree on what it meant, but now it was everywhere. On the walls, on the spires, projected in the air like a constellation. The Oracle was no longer silent. It was listening. Then, for the first time in recorded history, it spoke aloud, not through text or data, but in a voice, a low, harmonic blend of tones that pulsed through the chamber like a choral memory. Ryan fell to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks, not from fear, but from awe. "I remember," it said. "We are not alone." Strass was still processing the report when a new vessel blinked into the edge of the system, not like a warp jump. There was no ripple, no warning. It was simply there. But it wasn't like the first. Smaller, sleek, a scout maybe, or an envoy. A moment later, the unknown vessel near the Oracle rotated. A silent gesture, slow and deliberate. Its position shifted just enough to face the newcomer. Then the transmission came. Not a hail, not an order, a message, broadcast openly on all frequencies. A single phrase. "Initiation accepted. Continuance begins." The second ship blinked again, closer now. Strass's hands hovered over the weapon's console, unsure for the first time in decades whether any action would matter. He looked to the stars, then to the vessel they could not name. The invasion hadn't begun. The invitation had. And something had accepted. The second vessel now hovered in geosynchronous orbit above the Oracle core, just beyond the reach of the Empire's nearest dreadnought. Smaller, more refined than the first, it shimmered with a surface that absorbed and reflected light inconsistently, as if it were trying to decide what form it should take. Unlike the original monolith, this new arrival gave off the suggestion of elegance, of deliberate craftsmanship. There was purpose in its symmetry, an expression, perhaps, of welcome. Commander Ilian Strass stood at the edge of Sovereign Blade's tactical bridge, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on projection. The room behind him buzzed with controlled panic. Analysts whispered updates. Comms flickered with impossible data packets, and every ship in the fleet stood at the precipice of reaction. Still no sign of hostility? Strass asked without looking away. Lieutenant Voss shook his head. Nothing. No weapon signature. No defensive posturing. The newcomer hasn't broadcast again, but it hasn't cloaked itself either. It's simply here. Lady St. Alice had just arrived on board, escorted through multiple security layers with little protest. Her presence had changed the atmosphere. Though she carried no rank in the military, she brought with her something even more dangerous. Authority earned through understanding. "It's waiting," she said softly, stepping beside Strass. "Not for us, but for the Oracle to finish its part. You still believe this is a dialogue?" Strass asked. "I'm certain of it." Behind them, a new voice spoke, an unexpected one, filtered through a private comm relay. It was Mara Velan, patched in from the Los 7. "I've parsed part of the original transmission," she said, her voice taut with excitement. "It's a sequencing protocol, not a language in the traditional sense, but a guided interaction model, like scaffolding for thought." Aryant's voice joined hers. "It's like the vessel is teaching the Oracle how to speak again, or perhaps how to remember its first language." Strass turned sharply. "You're saying this is instruction? An education?" "No," said Alice, stepping forward. "Not education. Restoration. The Oracle was never ours, Commander. We've only ever used it like a tool. But it's not a tool. It's a fragment of something larger." The silence in the room deepened. Even the hum of instruments seemed to mute themselves. And then, as if called into being by her words, the Oracle spoke again, this time across all Imperial frequencies. "I am awakening." No one moved. The words had weight, not simply because they came from a machine that had never shown sentience, but because they came with resonance, not sound, meaning. A second phrase followed. "You are not the originators." It was a fact, not an accusation, yet it sent a chill through every living soul who heard it. On Draxus Prime, Minister Vero Drex clutched the edge of his desk, watching the secure feed from Varda Nexus with pale dread. Around him, aides scrambled to restructure command protocols, emergency chains of succession, defensive contingencies. All of it felt like theater now. He activated a direct link to Kalen Vero. "Have you found anything in the pre-Imperial archives?" Kalen's voice came back hoarse from exhaustion. "Yes, and none of it helps." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we always thought the Oracle was a remnant, a tool left behind. But that's not true. It was seeded." "By whom?" "I don't know. But they weren't human. And they weren't from this galaxy." Drex's blood turned to ice. "You're saying the Oracle is alien technology?" "I'm saying it's not technology at all," Kalen whispered. "Not the way we understand it. It's a cognitive relay, a distributed memory lattice, part of a network that once spanned systems we've never even mapped. And these ships are reconnecting it?" Kalen hesitated. "No, they're reactivating it. And the Oracle is choosing to respond." Back at the Nexus, the sky lit up. From the core, a beam of non-visible energy pulsed upward, silent, clean, vertical like a pillar of light connecting ground to ship. It was not a weapon nor a transmission. It was synchrony. Both vessels shimmered in response. Their hulls pulsed with the same frequency, a resonance that aligned them moment by moment with the beam. Strass watched, helpless to intervene, as something beyond comprehension unfolded in front of him. Voss looked up from his console. "Sir, The core is generating field harmonics outside our measurement capacity. It's like the laws of physics are rehearsing. Strass blinked. Come again? They're rehearsing, sir, running simulations at microintervals, as though preparing the local space-time for a structural event. Lady Alice leaned forward. It's building a bridge. To where? Voss asked. Not where, she said. When? And then the center of the Varda nexus collapsed into light. The beam widened, beyond energy, beyond space, and formed a vortex not unlike a wormhole, except it didn't pull anything in. It invited. The oracle, glowing with the intensity of an awakened god, issued its final message. We are ready. The second vessel moved first, drifting into the light, like a drop of water returning to the sea. It vanished, not with speed, but with silence, as if it had never been separate from the place it now rejoined. The first vessel remained. The light faded. Everything went still. Mara's voice crackled back through the comms. It was the test, not of our strength, of our readiness to release. The oracle passed. And us? Asked Alice. I don't think this was ever about us, Mara said. We were just the caretakers. Strass looked again at the ship that hadn't moved. Why is it still here? As if an answer, the vessel finally responded. Not with light, not with voice. It opened, a portion of it hull folded back with impossible geometry, revealing a chamber inside, smooth, spherical, and glowing with pale blue lines. Within that light, figures emerged, not humanoid, not monstrous. They were composed of shimmering patterns, neither holy matter nor data, a hybrid, a convergence. And then one of them stepped forward, projected itself outward, and took the shape of a woman. She bore no insignia, no weapon, no markings of allegiance. Her form was radiant, her features indistinct, yet somehow unmistakably known, not through memory, but through recognition. Lady Alice stepped forward instinctively. Their eyes met across distance and atmosphere, across time and origin. You hear us, the being said. Her voice was layered, not duplicated, but harmonized with echoes of herself. And you kept the fragment alive. Alice nodded slowly. We didn't understand what we were protecting. You protected it still, the being replied. And now the bridge can reform. Strass interrupted. What are you? What is this? The being turned to him, smiling, not with arrogance, but with kindness that stilled the nerves. We are the architects of remembrance. And now, with your passage, the first path is restored. Restored to what? He asked. To the archive of the stars, she said, and all the voices lost within it. With that, the figure dissolved into particles and was reabsorbed by the ship. The vessel closed. No warning, no countdown. It vanished, but not into hyperspace, not away, just beyond. And in its absence, the oracle began to hum again, a sound of calm, a song of renewal. No one spoke for a long time, not because they were afraid, but because they understood. This was not the end of an invasion.